Australia's Tim Tszyu will get his shot at world title redemption in a rematch against WBC champion Sebastian Fundora later this year. Our boxing reporter Cody Kaye has the details.
Well, it's such a massive opportunity for Tim. I mean, you go back to last year and he was the WBO champion going into that fight against Sebastian Fundora. The WBC title is on the line. He's beaten in a bloody brutal war, and then he goes and gets a shot at the IBF champion, Bakram Murtazaliev, later that year in Orlando, and he stopped in 3 rounds. Tim Tszyu's career was, for all intents and purposes, very close to being over. A win over Joey Spencer, and now all of a sudden he finds himself back on the precipice of becoming a world champion again. Sebastian Fundora, the WBC champ, is going to relinquish, we understand, his WBO belt. He was supposed to fight a Puerto Rican, Xander Zayas. It's a fight that doesn't really sell. The fight everybody wants to see is this rematch between Tim and Sebastian Fundora. It was one of the fights of the year in 2024 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. There was a rematch clause, but the details around it were a little bit murky. What we understand now is that basically Tim has been able to reenact that clause. Fundora is going to give Tim that rematch. So the fact that Tim goes from really almost the scrap heap of international boxing back into a world title fight within the space of 12 months is quite extraordinary. It is a huge chance for Tim to reclaim his place amongst the best in the 154-pound division. But Sebastian Fundora is an absolute beast. He's already defended that belt once. It was a 4th-round stoppage against Chordale Brooker earlier this year. He's an incredibly tough guy. 6'6". We all know that. He's a lefty. He's about as dangerous opponent as you could possibly wish for in any division, let alone the super welterweight division. The idea that somebody could be 6'6" is kind of hard to get your head around, but it's a huge opportunity for Tim. I was texting with him just a moment ago and I said, "Congratulations, how are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm back, I'm going to go and get that belt." So, I mean, I just can't wait. He was supposed to fight Keith Thurman. That's what we all thought the fight was going to be, but to all of a sudden be thrust back into a world title fight, the Keith Thurman fight now becomes completely irrelevant. Tim gets to reclaim his place amongst the division's best. If you go back to the first 2 rounds in that first fight when they met at T-Mobile Arena last year, in January last year, Tim completely dominated Sebastian Fundora in those first 2 rounds. He was well ahead on the scorecards, which is incredible when you consider the fact that he was supposed to fight Keith Thurman. Thurman injured his bicep and pulled out of that fight 6 days before. Tim Tszyu took the fight against Sebastian Fundora on 6 days' notice. He didn't get any time sparring. He'd gone from preparing for a 5'8" right-handed fighter who was 36 and probably past his best, to preparing for a 6'6" left-hander with no notice, and completely dominated him over the first 2 rounds. But the fact that Fundora is in this position now where he gives Tim the rematch, it's because the other fight that he was going to have, where he was going to defend the WBC and WBO crowns against Xander Zayas, just simply doesn't sell. It's not a big money fight. The biggest money fight on the table for Sebastian Fundora right now is a bloody rematch against Tim Tszyu, who very nearly, I think a lot of people will feel with the benefit of a full training camp, Tim can beat Sebastian Fundora. The 2 losses that he had, I think Tim's learned a lot. Look, you go back to the Sebastian Fundora fight, that loss, that's just a freakish cut where, you know, you can't do anything about that. Against Joey Spencer last time out last month, he was the clinical, patient, destructive fighter that we've seen Tim at his best. He's not a one-punch knockout artist. He never ever has been. I think we saw against Joey Spencer, even though Joey Spencer didn't really throw a whole lot of punches at Tim, that Tim's worked out what works for him. And he's a very technically gifted fighter. He's an intelligent fighter. Give him the full benefit of a 12-week training camp. He's going to give Sebastian Fundora a hell of a fight. I don't think Tim has any questions about whether or not he belongs. I think he genuinely believes he's still the best in that division. They're talking about 3 dates, July and August. My understanding is that we haven't had it confirmed, but it's as good as signed. So Tim Tszyu, WBC title fight in Las Vegas.